word of God says you're supposed to bring your tithes to the storehouse. It's the storehouse. Your tithes is not money. The preacher wants the money. God wants you to come store things up in here. Wheat, grain, blankets, pillowcases, beanie hats, diapers, tampons, canned goods. You come store it here to come out and feed the people.
Peace and blessings, my melanated people, God's people. Man, it is a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and we're out here loving, living, and enjoying this life the Most High has entrusted us with. This is another tough one for me, one that I really don't want to deal with, but I do realize that there are people out there who may be in this situation, and this may help them in some way see the light and find their way to the light. If you're a Christian and Christianity is working for you, you can turn it off right now. This video is not for you. It's for those who are struggling with it, who are down and who are depressed, and who are trying to figure out which way to turn next. I want to talk to you about that image of a pastor. I want to talk to you about your pastor, or about most pastors. Now, this does not cover all pastors, but it does cover a majority of them. Have you ever taken time to sit down and just look at the majority of pastors? Their profession is no different than that of a pimp. Your pastor may be a pimp, because a pimp puts his women, he has a stable, and he puts them on the street, and they work and utilize their body and bring him the money. Your pastor, you go off to work every day, pretty much selling your body, because that's what work is. You sell your body. You provide a service, whether it's physical or mental. You provide a service, and then in turn you are paid for it. And then that pastor is going to tell you to give him 10%. Now, actually, he's got a better racket than the pimp, because he's got a bigger stable. Considering most churches 300, 400, 500, they can reach up to 20,000 or more. So pastors have a large stable, and all they need is 10%. The pimp might only have 15, 10, 5, 10, 15, maybe at tops 20 girls. And so, he needs that full amount. And I've read the majority of, maybe all of them, I don't know. I know I've read the majority of Iceberg Slim's book, which deals a lot with scamming, the con and pimping. I watched a lot of documentaries on pimps, listened to Bishop Don Juan a lot. There's another iceberg from San Francisco that I've listened to a lot. And the reason I've listened to them, I've always listened to them a lot and dealt with them, is because it's amazing how they are master psychologists and psychiatrists. I mean, they have, to be a pimp, you got to have a full doctorate in psychology, and they have never been to school. They have never studied psychology. It's just natural for them. And I find that fascinating. And I was listening to Pimp Snooki, a documentary on him in an interview, and this girl came up and she said, "Daddy, I'm gonna keep this money for a dress. I want a dress." And he said, "No, you give me the money, you're gonna get the dress." And she put the money in his hand, and he turned to the interviewer and he said, "Now, no, I'm gonna get her the dress, but she needs to stay in the habit of putting that full money that she gets in my hand, or else she'll start needing her hair done and she'll slip a little bit back, or she'll do this and she'll slip some back. She won't put that full money in my, she needs to always be used to putting that full money in her hand. If she needs a new dress, I'll get her one." And so that's kind of the mentality. And that same mentality of your pastor. He wants you to put that 10% in church no matter what you got to do. Your light bill due, but the difference between the pimp is actually a little bit better than your pastor, because he gonna make sure that girl has everything she needs. Your pastor don't care if your light bill is due. He wants his 10%. And if it gets cut off, the church may or may not help you. They may help you a couple of times, but if you, let's say you only getting $1,200 or more, and out of that $1,200, they want 10%. But then you got to buy groceries. You got to pay your mortgage or your rent. You have to pay your car note. You have to pay all your bills. And actually, when you do your budget, there is nothing left over. You have to skip over something. But that pastor still wants that 10th. Now, not all of them. I have actually heard a pastor, a young pastor, on stage preaching on the internet, say that, tell the deacon, give them that money back. No, you need to pay your light bill first. But that's not many. That's few and far between. They tell you to take the money God has already gave you, give it to them, then pray for more to pay your light bill, pay your rent, pay your car note. It's a cold game. But that's just what it is, a game. And it's a game because the concept of tithing has been twisted. Tithing was originally, the people would come and tithe to the Leviticus priests who didn't have a heritage. They didn't have any income. They didn't have any land. They didn't have any animals. They weren't farmers. Their full-time job was to stay at the temple and maintain and to take care of the temple. So when people brought their tithes into the storehouse, they got the 10th for themselves. And the rest was put up in the storehouse. And if people were in need, a widow, a lady lost her husband, she had children to take care of, they could go to the storehouse and they could withdraw. But that 10th, that was for the priest, because they didn't have a heritage, they didn't have a job, they didn't have anything. But nowadays, they take that 10th, it comes into the storehouse, and it's for building fund, it's for light bill for the church, it's to pay the pastor, it's to do whatever else the pastor and the deacons decide they want to do. And then if there's somebody in need, they look at them cross-eyed like they're begging, when that's what the tithes are supposed to be for. But they look at you like they're begging. And then the smaller churches have these programs, these annual days, these things to raise money and stuff. And they really shouldn't be doing that, because Paul set the standard. He would tell people when he would come, he said, now, why don't y'all put a little aside every Sunday or every month or every week? Put a little aside so that when I come, you don't have to be running around raising money, taking up money, so that you can meet my needs without running around raising money and taking up money. See, there's some foolishness, there's some concepts that the modern day church has gotten into that doesn't benefit the people that it's supposed to benefit. But let's get back on the subject of the pimp. So the pimp, when he finds out that woman is not bringing in the money, she's not giving him all the money, she's not paying a portion of that money, he's going to physically or mentally abuse her. Now, same thing in the church. You're going to get mentally abused. There are even churches now, it's not, the tithing system is not even on the honor system anymore. Most mega churches and big churches now, they want to see your W-2. They want to see how much you made last year and how much you paid them, to make sure that you're giving a 10th. Now you tell me that's not strong arming, and that's not mental abuse, and that's not pimping. That pastor is going to get up, if the tithes are off, he's going to get up. I've seen it. He's going to get up and he's going to preach a sermon on tithing. He's going to browbeat you until the majority feel like they need to do better. That's the same thing the pimp is going to do. So whether you want to admit it or not, there's a good possibility your pastor is a pimp. Now let's talk about the clothing. Most pastors go to these big conferences and stuff, and there are clothing businesses that make their yearly budget going to the Baptist conference, to the Methodist conference, going to these big conferences and setting up booths and selling tailored suits, $2,500 for a suit, $500 for a shirt, $75, $80 for socks. And you pay for this. And your pastor comes back dressed up, sharp as a tack, in the pulpit with your money. That's the same way a pimp does. That girl brings all that money in, gives it to the pimp, and he goes out and buys all these extravagant clothes. But the difference between him and your pastor is that he's going to make sure she look good because she's got to make your money. You're going to have to figure out how you're going to look good. He's going to make sure that woman looks good because that's how she brings in his money. He'll make sure she has the clothes and the wigs and the weaves and the nails done and the hair and all that stuff that she needs to bring him in his money. He's going to make sure she does that. Your pastor ain't going to do that for you. You get yours the best way you can. Yeah, they go to these conferences and they come back and see, my unique perspective is, I used to be a minister. I've been a pastor, associate pastor, and I hear them come back and brag about how much they paid for the shirt, how much they paid for the shirt, French cuffs with the initials on them, how much they paid for this and how much they paid for that. There's a lady sitting in their congregation with 5 children, no husband, and school supply lists are coming out, and they're wearing on them enough to pay for her kids' school supply. More than that. Let me put it this way. Their shirt would pay for her kids' school supplies and still have plenty left over. But yet and still, when she comes and asks for help, they're going to tell her to pray and go seek God. Man, the foolishness needs to stop somewhere. Stop the madness. You don't want to admit it, but your pastor's a pimp. He's a pimp. And he's pimping you. All right, my melanated people, I ain't intending to make that long, but that was close to home and personal. So be blessed. Put feet to soil. Take in plenty of sunlight. And most of all, love your melanated self. Be blessed.